Greetings, Safe Citizen members and the South Africans that will see this video when you do the right thing and share it. Today it gives me great pleasure to share with you a video interview conducted with Mr. Johan Martin, who is the Corporate Legal Counsel for NatShoot, an organization of more than 60,000 members. We discussed the proposed changes to the proficiency training regimen by SAPS and the QCTO, that's the Quality Council for Trades and Occupations, and the great effect that this could have on community safety and security in South Africa. Not the least of which would be your ability to apply for a license to possess a firearm lawfully. That video will follow shortly after this. In closing, to those of you that have taken the time and been generous enough to donate to Safe Citizen, thank you so much for your input. Even the small donations are really important. And personally for me, the small donations are really encouraging because it means that it's come from somebody who doesn't have a lot of money to throw around and they've actually given a lot of thought to it. So thank you for your support. For those of you that are in a position to donate something, it will be greatly appreciated and it will finance this effort to continue to protect your rights. I hope that you will enjoy the video with Johan Martin and keep close to Safe Citizen. I bid you and your families a safe and happy week to follow. Greetings, Safe Citizen members and South Africans that will see this video. Today we are speaking to Johan Martin, Corporate Legal Counsel for NatShoot, over growing concern around proposed QCTO and SAPS linked changes to the South African firearm training system. For NatShoot, this is not a narrow training sector issue. It goes directly to lawful firearm ownership, certification, reliability, license administration, and of course, the rights of responsible citizens. Welcome to you, Johan.
Good morning to you, Jonathan, and the listeners. Thank you for having me and NatShoot on your platform.
Thank you. We are very pleased to be able to share and air NatShoot's views on this important platform. Johan, I think at the outset, perhaps you'd like to just share a little bit of your background with us.
Thanks, Jonathan. I grew up in the Free State. I joined the police just after school. Having been in the police for 22 years, I mainly worked as a detective. I worked as a murder and robbery unit officer. That is the so-called one of the elite units or squads in the police at the time. For 9 years, and I worked with 4 different units and retired as the commander of the Bloemfontein unit when I was boarded medically unfit from the police with post-traumatic stress disorder in 2002. That is the same year that the government decided to close down all specialized units, like the vehicle theft unit, SANAP, the narcotic unit, etc., etc. I think it was a big mistake, but it's gone. I retired as a lieutenant colonel, referred to in police language as a half colonel, or in Afrikaans a corporal colonel. So I was admitted as an attorney in 2004, and since then been practicing in Bloemfontein. And 2004 was a very important year for me because the same year the Firearms Control Act was promulgated. In the same year, I franchised Legally Armed. That is a firearm application motivation house. It's still going on with a good friend of mine, which I sold the franchise business in 2021. Having 32 franchise offices established at the time, and then assisting at that stage about 500,000 clients. But my speciality has always been in the tourism industry with the so-called field guiding, assisting the lodges or businesses with formal accreditation with the police and then licensing their business firearms. Ironically, in the same year, also in 2004, NATSHUT was established. I'm married to Siska. She's a journalist, and our daughter Anya is studying in Porch. What is important for me is I've been walking the walk and talking the talk with NATSHUT for many years. But I'm just grateful to be working for them for the past 15 months or so. That's it.
Thank you very much. It's actually intriguing that you gravitated from the police to become an attorney, and at your age, in your middle ages, or certainly when you left the police, that's quite an accomplishment to make that transition. But well done there. We're certainly pleased to have you as part of the legal fraternity in South Africa, representing lawfully armed firearm owners.
Thank you, Jonathan.
Johan, tell me, what is NATSHUT's central concern with the proposed QCTO SAPS changes to firearm competency training?
We must just be very careful with competency training, Jonathan. It's actually proficiency. And we have the public and the normal oaks, sport shooters and hunters that get confused and still after 2004 up to now with competency and proficiency. The training we're talking about is proficiency. But in any case, well, we should realize by now that there's a deliberate onslaught by government against legal firearm owners, including businesses that uses firearms as tools of the trade. We have mainly three issues, three reasons for saying that, and let's rather call it crises, all of them driven by government. Firstly, the first crisis that we have, and it's all active at this stage, is the private security industry. We call it the PSIRA Amendment Bill, which already has been promulgated. And I think there's so many admissions being submitted by so many different parties. So we're still fighting on that. And then secondly, we have the Firearms Control Amendment Bill, promised to be promulgated, and NEDLAC got involved there, but it's not yet promulgated, but surely it will be done this year. We think so. And then we have the current crisis where the Minister of Higher Education will have to consider by the 30th of June 2026, this is less than 2 months, if he should endorse the current quality assured service provider known as the Professional Firearm Training Council. We call them the PFTC, established more than 10 years ago. PFTC has been operating for more than 10 years ago. Or opt to introduce, that is all, keep with PFTC with all the standards that they have for 10 years, or opt to introduce a new skills program, which we know little of, as the government do not fully engage with PFTC or any other stakeholders like us.
Johan, please help me and the viewers out a bit with regards to the term promulgation. When you say that the CIRA regulations have been promulgated, does that mean that they have actually been accepted and that they are being placed into law, that it's maybe just waiting for signature by the president of the country, or is there still a debate to ensue on this?
That is actually, thank you, Jonathan, that is actually the time where they normally ask the public to make submissions. It's not white paper at that stage. And it's, ironically, it's always done over December, and the submissions must be in by the 12th of January.
Of course, that is the way that I have seen legislation introduced many times. This is not my first rodeo in public activism, and I remember that from my environmental debates as well. They would always do it just as the country is going on holiday, very cleverly. So yes, I think that just to talk into one or two of those things, the CIRA Amendment Bill If that comes to pass, just for the public to know who are going to see this video, security officers will not be allowed to use pepper spray. They will require special permission to carry handcuffs. And there is a complete onslaught onto the firearms platforms that are currently used by security officers. And to everybody that's watching this video, whatever day you watch it, I can tell you that on that day, you or somebody in your family has been kept safe, even vicariously, by the presence of a security officer with a firearm. And the security industry is more than 4 times the size of SAPS. And I can tell you that if that industry is affected materially by this bill, it will go to the heart of community safety and security in our country at a time where the South African police services are literally unable to look after the public. So keep that in mind, viewers. Thank you for that opportunity, Johan. So how do you think these changes, these proposed changes to the training regimen would affect lawful gun owners, hunters, sport shooters, and new applicants for firearm competency from the South African police?
Yeah, as I've mentioned, everything is not working our way or going our way. It will be a shifting firearm proficiency training from the PFTC, a specialized quality assured body from them to a SATETA-led skills program could significantly, sorry for that, jeopardize gun safety, increase training costs for up to between 4,000 and 6,000 rand, which is much less at this stage what you pay for a course with PFTC, and then cause massive industry disruption. I mean, it's logical. This change, feared to produce untrained individuals, would likely result in lower training standards, long administrative delays, and decline, and that's the most important thing, the decline of public safety.
Yeah, I think that I could definitely support what you've had to say there, because Safe Citizen is presently engaged in a critical review of the so-called skills program content that has been floated by the QCTO with input from so-called subject matter experts. And we are busy looking at that skills program in detail. And we're also casting an eye over the credentials of the people that are supposedly or allegedly, reportedly behind the development of that skills program. And I can share with viewers today that our team is not at all impressed with the depth, the scope, the accuracy, the applicability of that so-called skills program in an environment like firearms training. So we're going to have a full run at exposing that to the public of this country in the next couple of weeks before this June 30th deadline. That certainly is coming along fast. So let me ask you this. What happens if competency certification and statements of results become delayed, uncertain, or unreliable, Johan?
The proficiency certification, this will result in a significant crisis, another crisis in the South African firearm industry. It will sure be disruptive, as I've mentioned previously. But the key consequence include a complete halt to new police competency application, which is a formal application. That's where the police vet you and see if you are competent and etc. And then the verification. That's a whole police competency process. And the bad thing also, and I can't even think that it can happen, is that it will also be a failure to renew existing licenses or apply for new licenses, and again potential compromises the public safety.
Yeah, I think that it raises a very important question. And for those viewers who are familiar with Safe Citizen and the work that we do and that have seen some of our interviews, it's going to come as no secret. And even those viewers who actually have listened to Honorable Ian Cameron, who's a member of Parliament and the head of the Portfolio Committee for Police on television, it will come as no secret that there is deep suspicion around the ANC's motives for pushing this firearms control amendment bill so hard, that it has clearly become a campaign to disarm lawfully armed South Africans. Now, there are one or two reasons for that. One is that the ANC genuinely believes that by disarming lawfully armed citizens, the very people who follow the law, they are going to enhance public safety and stop violent crime in this country. I think that we can agree together here and also on behalf of the ANC that that is actually not a solution. The other issue is that they would maybe like to try and fix the optics in this country around the fact that as a government, they are pitifully doing nothing about the safety and security situation in South Africa, and that they would like to be seen to do something, anything, to try and fix that situation. And of course, the low-hanging fruit is lawfully armed citizens, because we're all traceable. They know who we are. They know what firearms we possess. They know what the serial numbers are. They know what our addresses are, and they can basically pursue that as a low-hanging fruit. So very interesting discussion that we could look at it another time. And you said that it would jeopardize firearm safety and community safety. I must also just take a step into the dark side this morning and wonder, on behalf of our viewers, whether or not this push against the firearm training system may also not suit the government in terms of its agenda to eventually disarm people. In other words, if we can't disarm you physically and we cannot bring the Firearms Control Amendment Bill into play because of opposition, then we will strangle the issuing of new licenses through competency applications, because we will strangle the training industry. So I think we could leave that there. It's something to think about, and maybe you and I can pick this up at another time.
Exactly, Jonathan.
Yeah. Johan, tell me, if you were a member of the public, what proof do you think the public should demand before any new system like this so-called skills program is recognized or implemented?
Jonathan, when assessing the validity of firearm proficiency training before it is implemented, the public and firearm owners should demand proof that ensures efficiency, safety, and adherence to established quality standards. It is the most important thing. Otherwise, we will have a lot of safety issues. You should not take it away from the PFTC if you cannot improve on the current quality assured systems.
And I think that, thank you for that. I think that the statistics of the PFTC are also very useful. And I don't have I won't guarantee down to the nearest 100,000, but the statistics are impressive. The PFTC since 2012 or 13 has quality assured more than 1 million firearm owners and some 3 to 4 million unit standards, because there's a different unit standard or knowledge module for each and every different firearm platform. So if one wants to have a shotgun for commercial, for occasional sport shooting, or a handgun for self-defense, or a rifle for hunting, each one of those is a separate application and a separate proficiency standard. So millions, literally millions of people. There are 500 or 600 training academies or service providers around the country. They employ thousands of instructors, thousands of assessors, and about 800 moderators. and the moderators are quite important because they actually, every quarter of every year in this country, every single training authority, training academy or institution has a compulsory moderation or verification of the training that they have produced and the students that they've certified in the last 3 months. And that is done without fail. I can assure you, as a training institution, that if my moderation report is not completed on time, I will be locked out of the learner management system and an investigation will ensue very rapidly. Now, all of that will fall away completely if the PFTC is taken out of the picture, and this is handed over to literally people who are now registered to provide skills training. So let's move on. And one thing I'd like to ask you is, do these changes risk making lawful compliance harder, more expensive, and even less thorough because of this regulatory overreach?
Thank you, Jonathan. The proposed shift from the PFTC Quality Assured Proficiency Training to a SACETA-driven skills program poses significant risk of making lawful compliance harder, even more expensive and less thorough. And it comes from industry stakeholders, not even myself. The PFTC, which have overseen training at roughly 500 providers, I'm not also sure if my numbers are correctly, warns that replacing the specialized oversight with SACETA, a government body, they claim lacks the necessary resource and will destabilize the industry.
I think it's important, actually, Johan, if I can add on to that, for people to understand that the reason that the PFTC actually exists is because in 2012, there was such an unholy mess around firearm proficiency training that generated the certificates presented to SAPS that would allow SAPS to consider an application for a firearm license. There was such a mess around that and such a lot of corruption reported that SAPS themselves requested the industry, the private industry, to create something like the PFTC, a quality assurance authority, to actually oversee the process because SACETA at the time could not manage it and were not managing it. And it was having an enormous impact on the integrity and veracity of firearm proficiency training and the reported standards. And we're now at a point where when SAPS are presented with an application for competency to possess a firearm based on a proficiency certificate from an academy, which is backed up by a statement of results, a barcoded national statement of results from the PFTC, SAPS can hold that in their hands and say, we can trust this training standard. Moreover, anybody in SAPS can enter the barcode number or scan the QR code. It will take them directly to the PFTC database, the formal database, and they can actually interrogate that statement of results to make sure that it is completely valid. It's been issued by a certified training authority. The identity of the person who is mentioned in the statement of results has been verified, and they can, in good conscience, move forward with assessing that person as being competent to receive, to be able to apply to own a firearm. And all of that would fly out of the window if this ridiculous change, manipulation, amendment to the system were to take place. There is simply no good reason whatsoever. And I'm sure that you agree with me. And I know that certainly after having chatted frequently with Herman Els of NatShoot, that this is NatShoot's overall view on this issue as well. So if I can ask you, I think getting towards the end of our discussion, what do you think should happen now to protect lawful ownership, the integrity of certification, and to maintain confidence in this system that has worked so well for so long?
Jonathan, we all know about responsibility, but the responsible course of action is straightforward. It's actually logical. Pause any implementation or immigration or migration. Fully disclose the proposed alternative, fully disclose it. Subject it to independent and technical legal review. Consult effective stakeholders properly, like us, because we want to make inputs, which we will do, and demonstrate operational readiness before any change is recognized. That's a normal world standard. The working system should not be displaced by unproven alternative, which maybe they are planning the government. The burden of proof lies with those proposing the change, which is the government. That is why our intention is, well, NATSHUT's intention is, and hopefully some other accredited associations, which there are many, is to make formal submissions to Parliament before the 30th of June, which is less than 2 months, to try and influence the decision of the Minister of Higher Education, and I surely should include the Minister of Police.
Yes.
Therefore, as I said, we urge all, sorry, Jonathan, we urge all other police accredited sport and hunting shooting associations to join us to take hands once again, which we've done with the Amendment Firearms Control Bill, which we've done with the PSIRA Amendment Bill, and we already have the support of Safe Citizen yourself. We have SA Gun Owners Association, SAGA, doing a hell of a job, both of you. And then we have so many, well, not many, but we have legal firearm law experts such as Martin Hood. I think about Damien Enslin and Larry Marks.
Yes, yes. Yeah, I think that those are very, very solid points that you've made there. And the interesting one that shone through for me was you mentioned that the burden of proof lies with those proposing the change. One cannot just make a change because for the sake of making a change. There has got to be a really good reason. Like with the Firearms Control Amendment Bill, the government is becoming increasingly challenged to provide actually a good reason as to why they want to amend the current robust and applicable Act 60 of 2000. And it's the same thing with this training. There is no good reason to make that change, and we need to put them to the proof that they need to provide in terms of that change. And I think that it's very important for viewers to understand that when you represent NATSHUT as their corporate legal advisor, you are representing an organization that has in excess of 60,000 members. That's a lot of people. That's just one association. So if the associations in the country start standing together, we are going to field a lot of commentary on this. But more importantly, this is not something that needs to be kept or that ought to be kept within the firearms fraternity. It needs to be expanded into the public realm. We need to raise a national clamor around this issue that the mainstream media and the governments and policymakers cannot ignore. This is something that should concern every member of the public. So, Johan, thank you very much for your contribution.
I sincerely, Jonathan, just before we retire, I just want to, or finish, I just want to say my sincere thanks for what you do in this industry. As an activist, I think you are very thorough, and yeah, you cover our backs for many years now. If I understand it from Dr. Herman Els, who is a good friend of yours. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Viewers, that was Johan Martin, Corporate Legal Counsel for NATSHUT, on why proposed changes to competency training are about far more than the course content. They go to the heart of lawful firearm ownership, certification, integrity, and public confidence in the system. Keep this space in mind, and we will see you the next time round.